Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Artist Within. I am your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest is Emily Derr. Let's get this show started. So, you're in the art world. What was your earliest time in your life where you noticed art was definitely a passion?
I would say kindergarten. I went to a Montessori school and my parents always encouraged the arts, like music, dance. And I always loved to draw. People knew early on, they would say, hey, that's really great. I had a second grade teacher that became friends with my parents after, like, long after I'd left the school. And she saved some of my acrylic paintings from second grade. I hadn't spoken to her in years, and she gave them to my parents. And so I still saved some of Emily's work. So that was really the drawing, and the visual arts classes were always my favorite. I always was doing summer day camp with that. And I also took up sewing. I begged my mother to sign me up for sewing classes at the fabric store. And she normally didn't take on children, but I was very persistent. So she took me on.
Awesome. So, that's a lot, painting, sewing. But I know you told me you went to school for interior design and gemology. Why those two things?
So I went
Out
to
of
school
all of them.
actually with fashion design, but
That's what it was. Sorry, fashion design.
gemology came later. So fashion design, I did not. I loved architecture, but I didn't want to do a 5-year program. And the architecture, their life was in the studio. And while fashion design, we had a lot of time in the studio, a lot of sewing and late nights, and it made sewing sometimes stressful and not fun. But it it was I loved clothes, and I loved how people could change their persona with garments. I loved historic costumes. I always loved going to museums and seeing the costume eras, especially the colonial era. And gemology I fell into by accident. I went to I started working in the jewelry industry. I was in store communications prior. They wanted to move me out of state, so I had to pick a position to stay local where I'm at in Connecticut. And the local jeweler needed help with, social media, marketing, and just, some admin things. And they were offering full time. So I started working for them 7 years ago, and I took some gemology classes. I was so interested in learning more. So I was doing distance courses from the Gemological Institute of America.
Cool. And are those earrings a part of your love?
So yeah, I did wear them today. These are Larimar earrings, and actually they were a gift from my father. They were at sterling silver. He had gotten them on a trip, and I've had them since high school. But I love them today. I was wearing blue. I'm wearing some other pieces as well from the jewelry industry. I love layering different pieces. Inexpensive brass and plated pieces with very high end gold, silver, diamonds. I love just, juxtaposing the different looks.
Cool. So you have a business called Grassroots Impact. Can you explain what that is?
So I coach artists. Like, what I really love most is, like, I am a working artist of sorts. I do exhibit, but I started a business coaching artists. I came across it by accident. I had started being a freelance assistant for an artist who shows her artwork in New Mexico and Connecticut and California. And I realized I wanted to expand my offerings and help artists, and have a business around it, and also help with mindset too, and help them work through creative resistance. So I started learning breath work and other techniques. And I started working with a business coach, and I created, one-on-one private client programs. And I also was on the board of a museum. A client from the jewelry industry got me a board position, or encouraged me to apply for the board of a local museum. And so I was serving on their board, and I said, why not offer my coaching and programs to galleries and museums? So I created, a program around that. I have a gallery client I'm working with. It's mainly local clients because I just love the local arts communities. But I do, it's virtual work. So I do, work with all sorts of artists and institutions. But yeah, it was an accidental sort of snowball effect that culminated. So I really love helping other artists promote their work and identify new business opportunities, collaborate with the business community, and form transformational collaborations.
So what was one of the hurdles you found in starting your own business? Because I'm assuming that wasn't something you were aware of how to do. So what were some of the hurdles?
So it's a very niche business. So even though I worked with a business coach, she's mainly specialized with spiritual businesses. And when I was doing the initial research, I was talking to galleries. I thought originally I was going to be a one-woman show, PR woman that specialized in arts marketing and the forming business relationships for them. But I realized they didn't really value, a lot of them are very tech savvy enough for the social media aspect. And while some could use some support with that, and I do offer that, the mindset element was key, and helping people work through creative resistance and manage stress. And I didn't have that in my test program when I was doing my research. So when I had written my program, and as part of research, I would talk to people and other artists and see what they thought about it. It was a flop. Like they just it didn't resonate. And I said, I'm not really excited about this business. But then when I added the mindset element and the breath work, as well as the marketing and the social media, and I made it really, really customizable depending on the particular client, I enjoyed it more, and people were really receptive and said, hey, that's really interesting. Oh, hey, I could really use that.
Cool. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
And also being a working artist too, I do have, it was also, it had to be judicious about my time. And it's very easy to get distracted and think you're going somewhere and you're just doing a task that's not going to make the boat go faster, or, build your business and help more people.
So going back to you, what exactly are you still painting?
I am. I still, I did, a couple, I do upcycled canvases with old watch and jewelry ads. I've done a few of those, because in the jewelry industry, they'll dispose them. So I would do acrylics, paint over them. So I did a few of those over the pandemic. I've been doing, I did sort of an accessible art. I sold a few pieces made out of recycled material from food delivery. I get one of those Sunbasket, and they had this ground up recycled fabric. It had this beautiful blue, like fuzzy texture. And I made fashion illustrations, like upcycled art, out of that, with the texture from the packing material and collage from recycled jewelry industry magazines. Because there's a lot of textures and stones, and I would just put together looks and sell them on Instagram and Facebook for a very introductory price, because they were all recycled materials. I didn't really have to buy it. It was more just using what I had, and making smaller works that were accessible.
I like that idea. So the designs behind you, I'm assuming, are some of your fashion design work?
They are, yeah. They were some, I actually sewn 6 of these garments. They were part of a series for my college graduation. And years later, I had repurposed them and framed them and put them in an exhibit because they were just so beautiful. And what do you do with fashion boards? I wasn't really putting together a portfolio for the fashion industry. So I framed a lot of those drawings and started, exhibiting them. And also I've even donated some to the museum that I serve on the board for.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So how did you cope with the whole COVID thing? Because being an artist, even though most of your work is at home, you still have to go out and exhibit, and most of the exhibits were canceled or rescheduled. How have you been pivoting?
So for me, I do some work on social media. My gallery client I'm working with is very adept at doing virtual exhibits and virtual shows. Same with the museum too. So that was definitely, you couldn't have people in the building. It had to be by appointment only. So yeah, there's that, you weren't getting the revenue from these events. And the museum that I served on the board for, and that I still do, they weren't set up to have revenue generating from online events. We had, an active social media presence. They did appointment only, but a lot of the events, like the gala, were canceled. So, but thankfully, with a board full of accountants and lawyers, we were able to get, grants and things like that. So that helped. But me personally, I get most of my learning and most of my communities are virtual. So a lot of my in-person communities did move to virtual. It wasn't the same as being with them, but it was the next best thing. And I have my virtual communities for support. And I wasn't one of those people that went to a gym. I use a fitness app and virtual classes anyway. So I'm used to getting, my spiritual, educational training virtually. So to me, it wasn't a culture shock. It was more, I had more time to really dive into these virtual communities and lean on them. And really see it and really, make the most of the programs that I was signed up for.
Yes, I actually hope once we get out of the tunnel, the pandemic tunnel, that the art world realizes that these are still great tools to utilize, because if you only, whether it's theater, whether it's art, whether it's dance, if you are in a location, the only people who can see your art are those who choose to travel to that location. But if you make it virtual, anyone from any state, any country can now have access to that art. And so I hope they do continue virtual art and virtual showings, along with going back to, the way things were.
Like a hybrid model. I think a lot of places are going to do the hybrid model. The gallery client, the museum I'm working with, the hybrid model, because the virtual model, it makes art, art applicants for exhibits can apply for more places because they don't have to worry about shipping their artwork and driving it down and picking up if it's a virtual show.
Yes. So are you always working on something? And if so, are you working on any artwork at the moment?
I am always working on something. I am still doing the fashion illustrations. I haven't been posting them lately, but I've been doing the accessible works. I've also been doing with my breath, when I, practice breath work with other practitioners, I've been doing some other, some very fluid illustrations based on my breath work and meditation experience. So I work on those too. And also, I'm working on, recycled jewelry line that I originally started a concept called BB and Aspen, named after my sister's cat and dog. And it was when I was taking a wire working class, and I had a lot of, broken costume jewelry and stones and beads. So I kind of organized it all together and started creating these recycled jewelry pieces. So I haven't been as devoted into that because I've had other things going on, but I've been doing a project at a time. When I am on the creative wave and I feel inspired to use a different material, I just do it. So that's really, but it's been intermittently, but that's what I've been working on.
I'm very intrigued at your diverse world of art and how you don't limit yourself to just one thing. I think that's really good. So my last question for you, fun question. If you had the opportunity to meet up with any artists in the world, whether they be dead or alive, for conversation, maybe lunch, who would this person be and why?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. I would say I saw this painting at the Museo del Prado, and I forget who does it, but I absolutely loved it. I don't know. Let's see. I think there's a few different artists I would love to meet with. Maria Brophy, first of all, she and her husband. She's the writer of. She's an art author, and I get her emails. And she and her husband did licensing for a surfboard company. They're always doing different projects. So yes, I would love to meet. She's like the modern artist businesswoman I would love to meet. And I would like to meet Degas. And also the anonymous, this is kind of weird, the anonymous makers of the fashion plates in the 17th and 18th centuries. There's a lot of them out there that are anonymous. And I read a book on them and I said, I want to meet the people who did that, who did those. Those were breathtaking. To time travel and see their commentary on fashion. It's hard to limit it to just one.
You're watching the artist. You're watching the artist within.
That is all the time we have for you today. Emily, Derr, thank you so much for taking the time to stop on by and sharing your work and your art with us. And of course, our audience, thank you so much for watching and viewing. Have a great day. Have a great week.